Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay, so I'm
see.
really honored to welcome special guests here with me on the stage. We have Michael Schneiders from PwC Enterprise Architecture, Data Transformation and Strategy. Then we have Laura van den Eshof, Director of Finance, Insights and Analytics at KPN. We have Marc Reguera from Microsoft, leading the Power BI and Synapse customer engagement, and Sam McKay, founder and CEO at Enterprise DNA. And last but not least, we also have Andrei Lapaine, our founder and CEO here at Zebra BI. So hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
So before we dive into digital transformation topic and all the challenges that come with it, let's first hear more about your background. What's your role in reporting? What led you here? Perhaps you, Laura, can go first.
Well, what led me into reporting? Well, I'm already in reporting since 2010, actually. And at 2018, so 8 years later, I joined KPN. And at that moment, I reached a totally different level of reporting. They just won an award for their reporting innovation initiative. So the bar was set. And that's where, the second half of my journey started.
So
So
big
quite a
shoes to
time
fill.
already. Yes, definitely.
Thank you,
But there was
Laura.
still lots to do.
Okay, so then Michael.
Hello, I'm Marc Schneiders. I'm from PwC in Frankfurt in Germany. I'm doing BI projects or analytics projects for more than 7 years now. I'm manager, and at PwC I'm in charge of the huge transformation project, and I've been in charge of who needs to know what in the European organization and how do we get this data in a global data model and get meaningful reports out of this data.
Great. Okay, next we go with Marc.
Hi, so I'm Marc Reguera. I've been at Microsoft 28 years. I'm old. I spent 20 years in corporate finance. And after many years of copying and pasting from Excel to PowerPoint, when Power BI came, I had a bit of an epiphany. And I realized that there was a way out of that Control C, Control V, and all the VLOOKUPs. And so I changed careers. I moved to the product group, and I lead a team of folks who help customers like you, but more importantly, bring the learnings of that engagement into the product. So think of us as the enterprise voice. So first 20 years, building a lot of report dashboard in a very manual way, big passion on data visualization, and then I moved to the engineering group to try to make the product better as a practitioner, as a user. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
We're happy to have you as well. Next one, we have Sam McKay.
Yeah, hey everyone. Great to be here as well. And my story is pretty similar to Marc, actually. I was historically in finance. I worked at a bank, an investment firm, and then in the treasury department at a large company in New Zealand. And the reason I got into Power BI was as soon as I used it, I think I was about 5 minutes in, and I just knew that this was a transformational tool. I think I actually resigned from my job about a week later and said, I'm going to start up Enterprise DNA, because I just know this is going to change the way you manage data, the way you analyze it, the way you visualize it, distribute it. It was just so transformational to all the work that was being done in Excel and PowerPoint and tools of old. So that's why I got into it, and I think it's really played out as I sort of thought, and it's still got a long way to go, which is really really exciting.
Great. And Andrei, are you going to share as well your story, how you got into reporting?
It's a long story, but to make it really brief, I'm basically in reporting for 25 years now. Yeah, I'm somewhat older than I look, I guess. But I started as a consultant. So I was doing a lot of projects like training, consulting, mentoring for companies, mostly in Europe, using different tools, everything from a lot of Excel, of course, but also Tableau, Tableau Click. And there were older tools like ProClarity and, SAP Business Objects and so on. And then I sort of I didn't as a consultant, I felt like I just cannot offer to the clients what I would like. I always had those, oh, you need those 12 charts and they need to be scaled, and I need this button here to press it. And no tool was able to do that. I mean, so yeah, I started our own tool, and yeah, here we are. So I made this pivot from consulting to actually creating products.
Great. Well, I'm really glad that you did, because now we can be a part of your company.
Thanks.
Okay, so you all have different backgrounds, but the thing that you have in common is that you've all seen what digital transformation looks like in real life. And from your years of experience, what would you say was the hardest part when you started improving your reports, either in the organization that you were a part of, or when you were making the transition, like Sam, into a new company? So what would you say is the biggest challenge when you start creating a change in the organization? Don't go all at once.
But maybe you want to call somebody, because
Okay, Marc, because you started speaking. Let's
no,
start with you.
okay. So for me, it's simple. It's usually people, because I could have had 3D holograms reports. I believe that when you do something new to a group of 10 people, there's always one or two who are excited. There's one who never want to change. And there is 7, 8 that are like, I've been doing this for 10 years and this looks great. And so, you take the one or two, people who are excited, the champions, anoint them, give them a lot of power. And for me, what matters is having strong executive sponsorship. Once we have the leaders starting to say, this is important, then you have to have a center of excellence. You have to grease the wheels, because that transition, that friction that comes with change, we need to minimize that between executive sponsorship, the champions, and a center of excellence. Then you start getting momentum, one or two, the executives like it, you get a quick wins, and then the wheels gets going. That to me is the way. I don't believe the technology, obviously you have to have a good product, but often you have amazing products. Some people don't want to move from PowerPoint static presentations because that's the only way they know. And so I ignore the one who never wants to change. I take the two who are always excited, and then with exec sponsorship, I try to get a quick win, and then get the others to train and to ease them into transition. And pretty soon, the wheel turn. I let others share their perspective.
Yeah, maybe Michael, you can add to that, because your PwC is going through the biggest digital transformation project ever in the history of the company, right?
Right, that's fully right, and I fully have to agree with Marc. It's in the end, we are all using technology, but the game changer are the people. Yes, you have to get the buy-in from the people. You have to get the people. You have to design products where the people say, "Wow, I really love them. I really like them. They're easy to use. They are easy to understand." So user experience is all, because we have a lot of people who would like to keep on using their Excel reports, or who say, okay, I have a new change. Why do I need this new change? And in the end, you really need to emphasize what really drives the value to the users and to the business. And this is what you really need to put in focus.
Thank you. So perhaps Sam.
Yeah, I would say similar things. One of the best things you can do very early on is inspire. Inspire users and analysts and consumers within an organization about what can be achieved. That can be done with, say, external resources, but it's better if it's done on some internal data, really transforming something that already exists within the organization. If you can get that inspiration going, you're going to get much better buy-in and engagement throughout all the people that matter to make decisions in an organization. Then, following on from that, if you can inspire some of the executives, some of the key stakeholders, that is even better. I'll give you one example of the best and quickest deployment of Power BI that I've seen. is the CEO of this company that we worked with a few years back. So it was quite early on with Power BI. Absolutely loved Power BI, saw the benefits, and what he did was he had a Microsoft Surface in his office with Power BI always on it, and so when everyone was walking past his office, they would always see Power BI, and that was the best overall implementation. You saw everyone buying in really quickly, and then at every single meeting they had to come with a Power BI report, and then very quickly it was widely adopted throughout the entire organization, and then there was much more immersion in data by way of Power BI.
Mm-hmm. So when you say inspire in the beginning, do you mean create a better report and show it to the people, or what would be?
Yeah,
How
look,
straight is
and
that?
I think it's as easy as that. I mean, you've got to Power BI is so compared to what, especially if you're a Microsoft shop, compared to what you've used historically, you're stuck in, and this is probably very common even now, is that you're stuck in Excel and PowerPoint. It's all static, so it's actually not that hard to create something that's inspirational with Power BI. I mean, you can create something dynamic. You can analyze a lot more. You can put it online in this cloud-based experience. I mean, it is quite easy to inspire in my experience. So that's really it. Obviously, I think if you can design something with Zebra BI, and you can get the color, you can get a lot of the things right that Andre was mentioning earlier around like really purposeful design and really actionable design. All the better.
Mm-hmm. And someone is okay. Great. So Laura, what would you add to this experience? Because your story had lots of ups and downs, and you had to go through all of the phases, not just the good ones.
Exactly. Well, I've heard a lot of familiar things from every one of you, but at the same time, there's one thing that I can add to this, or maybe two things. Well, one thing is also to build trust. I just heard being said, well, you just have to show something that is marvelous and that sells itself. But in the area of financials, it's just the figures that matter. If the reports are not correct, then the solution is worthless. So that's really something that was much harder to get rid of Excels, because those have proven their value and they were right. And they could be, if necessary, adjusted at the last minute if new insights were coming in. And that's really something we had to overcome. So building trust is something that is very important too. And indeed, it goes like with ups and downs. It's no linear route to success. In the beginning, top sponsorship is crucial. And we had that great situation where our board of directors was in standing off a touchscreen during the reviews, the financial reviews. And that was, of course, inspiring to the finance organization as well. But then COVID came. Well, there's moving to teams, adjusting to that. So it's a journey where you have to regroup, and inspire and move on.
Yeah,
I agree with that completely. I mean, of course, the trust needs to be there. I mean, that's just the base. Otherwise, everything, just not working. But I'm really glad that we started with the adoption of adoption, with the topic of adoption, because I also believe that this is by far the biggest obstacle, and there are many reasons for that. So it's good to understand why do we all have problems with adoption, right? Because I mean, the adoption is I think it's an equation with two parts, and one part are the people, as mentioned before, but the other part are the tools, the software and software manufacturers and so on. It goes, there are two parts of this equation. So with people, we need to understand that people are not trained, and I mean, the trends are so fast. I mean, there's new technology coming out, and people are used to some tools, and the tools change, and it's not just in BI and reporting. I mean, everything is getting integrated now. Now you need to not just create reports and use them. You need to use them interactively, run them in teams, make sure, and you need to make that work and make sure that security is there. So you need to understand, somebody needs to understand the administration part of that and so on. So it's an equation that just gets, more complex and complex for the people. And we need to understand that. And also, like, even from reporting point, nobody has trained us, how to create good reports. Visualization. This is not a topic on any almost on any university in finance and so or economics or IT, right? So there's lack of this practice. People are not trained, so we need to invest into training. We need to educate within organizations and so on. We just need to empower people with knowledge and materials and so on. That's what I see. And this is one part of the equation. And the other part, where us software manufacturers come in, is we need to create better tools. This should be our mission, better user experience and so on. Even Microsoft Power BI, it turned around the whole market, and it has started a revolution. Everybody loves it, but it's still, it's still this is just still the first stage. It's still a tool where you need, partners and consultants and IT people to set the security and so on. What I would like to see is a transition towards real self-service, which is which has been a buzzword for more than 20 years. I mean, I've heard that in BI, like in 90s almost. And we're still not there. Talk about low code, and so that's still code, right?
Yeah.
For the adoption, for the end user, it needs to be self-service. It needs to be self-explanatory without trainings and so on. Just really intuitive and user-friendly.
Go ahead, Marc. Michael. Okay, who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Michael.
We very often hear the sentence like, we want reporting, or we want reports in the usability like an iPhone. I think the iPhone changed a lot. The people don't want to interact with technology. The people just want to have their dedicated use case, and this use case needs to be fulfilled very, very easily. We say click, click, done. Yes, we have 2 clicks, and then user interaction needs to stop, and the user needs to see some results on his demand. And this is the thing. We need to put the user needs in front of the technology, because this is driving the value and this is driving the acceptance. And of course, security is really important. Clean data management. Without having clean data in place, we don't have trust. The whole solution is nothing in the end. Yes, this is, I think. But with all in our project, we replaced many systems. Say we have Salesforce now, we have Oracle now, we have Workday now. All this data, but in the end, where do the people get the first touch point, where they get any results of all the transaction? It's in BI, it's in analytics, it's in the reports and the dashboards that people are using. And then this things needs to be very simple, very user-oriented, and very much oriented on the demand of the users and on things which drives user value. And this is the game changer, because as Andre already said, we are not taught or we're not educated in a way, don't know what it means to build a good report. Yes, we know how to use technology, but just because you can code, this doesn't mean that you can build a product or that you can build a report which is very easy to use.
I would add a couple of things. I would say, as you say, Andre, there's one program in the US run by Alberto Caro in University of Miami for data visualization. But I started in this because I became passionate about data visualization. I started reading Edward Safdie, Stephen Few, Alberto Caro, and it's like a cook. I mean, you may have a good knife, but you have to learn how to cook, when to use a bar, line, columns. Those are principles of data visualization. And a lot of people approach data visualization as decoration, not as design. Design is, what do you use for what purpose? Decoration is make things look pretty. So think like a designer. What's the purpose? And there is an entire emerging science of data visualization. And you say all of those things in your manifesto. The context at the end of the day is the most important. The right visual, the labels, the colors, all of that is a craftsmanship that people have to have. Then they can use technology. But we didn't have really good technology 10, we still had good reports that were well designed. It took forever. It was a nightmare. But the craftsmanship of data visual, people should study Stephen Few and Alberto Caro and Edward Tufte, and then get into technology. And it's exactly like a cook. You're never going to get a good meal because of a knife. It's always the cook that matters. Technology is important, but so I agree with all of the things you said. And I think people should invest more in the principles of data visualizations.
Great,
and we
great.
should help them. I mean, it's our duty, I think, also to help them, as you know, even though we are just producing tools, but it's like a knife, right? Tool is just a knife. So that's why we have this conference also. But we also have a lot of materials and videos and webinars and white papers and courses, and now we'll have an academy that will be free for everyone. So we really need to invest. I mean, at least this is what we believe here in Zebra BI. It's not just the tool; it's the whole thing.
Exactly. And perhaps, Sam, you can share your thoughts here as well, because your educational platform has taught thousands of people how to work in BI, in Power BI, and how to do the reports. So what do you see maybe from your backend analytics? What are the topics that are most searched for, and what do people really look for when they are just starting out?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. And it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one because I think that things have really evolved in the educational space around Power BI in the last couple of years. Because I would say, and it'd be interesting to see what others think here, the most searched thing around Power BI, and probably the first thing that most Power BI users want to learn, is DAX. It's about learning DAX. And I think that is for a variety of reasons. I think one of the main reasons why is because there was such a focus on DAX early on when Power BI was released. And so there's so much material online about Power BI and DAX. But the reality is if you want to deploy Power BI really successfully within an organization, DAX is only one small part of that. It's an important part, yes. It's the analytical engine which runs Power BI. So there's no doubt there, but there's so many other aspects to an overall successful deployment of Power BI. There's making sure that your data is managed well and your data pipelines are organized so that your users can access the data effectively. The modeling aspect. Then you've got your analysis in there as well, but then you've got your visualizations that we're discussing, which are incredibly important, making sure that your reports are engaging. And actually producing insights that are going to matter. And then you have the distribution, using the online service effectively, using creating reports that are viewable on mobile, on iPads, on iPhones, etc. So I would say still the most popular thing to learn in Power BI is DAX. And I'm not saying not to learn it, but all that we've learned over time is that there's far more things. There's much more you need to learn well to create a nice looking report, but also just have a successful deployment of Power BI.
And Laura, how did you decide on the redesign of your reports? How did you approach the whole transformation? Did you just know from the top of your head how to which design to follow? What's the perfect layout, or was it a process? How did that look like in KPN?
Well, over the 4 years I've been involved in dashboard development in KPN, I've seen like them progressing over and over, being redesigned and improved. Of course, we are very happy with the Zebra BI visuals, and we are very happy with the IBCS standards that help us to follow proper good standards and how to visualize. But we're constantly in interaction with our end users to make them fit for their work, because sometimes you get a question for a report, but really understanding how they use it, that's crucial in developing what is helping them in their work. And it involves like the information that's presented, the way the information is presented, but also the tools around it, like commenting function, the interaction functions, etc. That will all add to it. The full experience, actually.
And how do you explain all of this to your colleagues? I mean, KPN has thousands of employees, so I imagine it can be pretty hard, challenging.
Well, it's focusing on the finance area, which is going into the organization. So we have a big group of ambassadors that go into the organization. So it's also mouth to mouth. It's a rolling story that is going on. But it's taking them along and involving them closely. Really, we have we are close to our users, and we really involve them in our roadmaps, in our agenda, everything we develop, in the pilots we are doing. And I think that's the way to approach it, and that makes you fast.
I think Laura says something very important is the deep understanding of your stakeholders' needs. Because a report depends on who is going to use it, what their role, if you're in sales or if you're in pre-sales, post-sales, you care about consumption. I think Laura mentioned something that I think people forget is sometimes the analysts think of them as a DAX person, as a reporting person. I'm going to build, but understanding what decisions are going to be made, how are they going to use it, is something underappreciated, undervalued. And we shouldn't approach this as a reporting. It's really, you got to think first as an analyst. And I'm glad Laura brought this up because often tell me what you want and I'll put this in a table instead of saying, hey, what is your job? What do you do? What decision? How do you know, are you successful? So I'm glad Laura brought it up.
Yeah, this is a great point, Laura and Marc. Exactly, and yeah, I agree. It's missing. It's missing. I mean, it's also missing in the community. It's also missing in education. like Sam said, I mean, it's the most popular training is DAX, and there are lots of those technical sessions, training sessions. How do you calculate something? How do you do this formula? How do you do that? But nobody is trained how to actually get the right requirements from the user. I mean, there are people who are trained for that, and there are specialists for that, but they're virtually non-existent in the Power BI community, as far as I see, right? And so that's understanding the end user, putting your mind into your end user. Okay, who is this guy? How does he know when he's successful at the end of the month? What is his number one most important KPI, and how does he know that it's something is good or bad at the end of the month? What's the goal? How do you explain that? If that is not, what is the next information that will explain that? So understanding all the cause-effect relationships in the data and so on. I mean, this is what a business analyst should do first. And first, you need to understand this picture. And then, of course, you go back and you create something, and then you help this user with the things where you are better than the end user, right? So you should learn from the end user about the business, but then the end user should learn from you what is possible, So not ask, well, tell me what you want, and we'll do a table, right? But okay, tell me what you need. What's your business? How do you know? And then go back and deliver something. Think about it and deliver something much better. With a really good solution. Bring something back that will satisfy those requirements, but provide something more, right? Something more something that is possible today, and that. Otherwise, we are in another trap in adoption, which is complacency, right? Which is like, all right, we have those reports. In our previous tool, like in Excel, MicroStrategy, whatever was the previous tool, and now we just want exactly that now in Power BI. Can you make that, right? So it's also a question that we get as custom visuals, like, oh, can you do that because we want that from that design or something, that function, and it's it's crazy. it's completely crazy. Now you have this tool that is amazing and it works and it's integrated and so on and you want to copy the things that from the previous tool that were copied in that tool from the previous tool, and you basically want something that you had 20 years ago. Now it's crazy, and we need to be the ones to just break that and make the change.
Yeah.
And if I can add one practical suggestion to it, because if you ask your user, your stakeholder, to join the meeting, for instance, where the dashboards is being used, and to be there, the fly on the wall, and have a look at how it's being used, that's something that is very practical. And you see your dashboard your report being used, and that's the best feedback you can get. Really.
On your own data.
Yeah.
I mean, this epiphany
Yeah.
only comes when people see their own data, right?
Exactly.
In the new way.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, you spent months gathering requirements for your big project. You probably relate with a lot of that.
Yes, and I fully agree to this. Actually, we needed for the requirements gathering, we took for the major dashboards up to 4 months, 4 to 5 months actually, including the full understanding, really understand what is the real problem we want to solve. Yes, just users are saying, okay, we need to analyze a business unit, or we do a lot of engagement or projects or clients analysis. So in this background, we first needed to understand what are the real problems we need to solve. What are the main questions in this context? And then in the next step, when we had a deep understanding on what is the real problem, what are the real business questions which are asked, which decisions are being taken, then we could start step by step in an iterative process, how the product should look like, which functions are needed, yes, which data is needed. And I think it's very important when you do the requirement gathering or when you define the solution afterwards, you need to make it touchable for the user. Just don't describe it in any text. You need to really, we did sessions with users where they had flip charts, where we draw all the dashboards on the wall. We had paper dummies. We had wireframes. We had clickable prototypes for all of this in place. And step by step, we came to a more and more mature solution. But in the end, we could be sure that the solution we have designed is highly accepted by the user and is driving the value he's asking for.
Yeah. Exactly. So you all have a lot of experience, but even you had to start somewhere. So what would be your advice to someone who is just starting their reporting or digital transformation journey?
Well, I think I think I saw it already in the introduction. Start with like a group of believers. The search for an area where people want and have the same belief as you have, and start there and make success fast. Just make sure that you have like a good MVP. You can show your results fast, and then make it a success, make it bigger, communicate about it, and then expand and conquer the organization.
I can just quickly follow that as well. And this has been a theme that I've been thinking of for the last 20 minutes or so whilst others were talking, is don't be scared of taking an iterative approach to Power BI. I think that when you look at Power BI and you look at your data and analytics implementation, it can sometimes be overwhelming. There's so many features, there's so many things for you to do. But as Laura is saying, you can start small. Find your early adopters, find your champions, and really get those individuals as engaged and excited as you possibly can get them. And then I would say you can very easily iterate once you get that initial buy-in. So taking an iterative approach is absolutely fine with Power BI. You don't need to. You don't have to plan out this 3-year implementation and get everything perfect before you start rolling things out. It can be done a lot quicker than that. You can start very, very small and slowly evolve what you're doing, evolve with the new features that are coming out, evolve with the new resources and ideas that are coming out from the community.
I think what Sam said is very interesting as well, because in my opinion, you have to have first a motivated executive, somebody who wants to do it. Second, as he said, you shouldn't try to boil the ocean. The scope is very, very important. And if you have a motivated exec, reasonable scope, a good analyst, and decent data, so it's not, you can do this very quickly. For example, at Microsoft, we started in finance, 5 people from finance, from IT. We said, this is what 3,000 finance people do every month. They calculate renewal rate, they calculate. So we work with some IT folks to develop a model, a semantic layer, and overnight, after an iterative process where we do trials and error, as Sam suggested, a month later, we had a model that improved the productivity of each finance person by 50% because each one of them had to do this all the time. So executive that is motivated, decent data, reasonable scope, and a good analyst, you can do something very quickly, very fast. An analyst will tell you, as Laura said, what is needed. And if you have a decent developer, all of that could be done quickly. The problem, I think, is that people don't know exactly what they want. I'm going to get all the data. So you have to start. At Microsoft, we started with the country scorecard. We defined 25 to 30 KPIs 20 years ago, which was really hard because everybody wants one version of the truth as long as it's theirs. So it took the chief operating officer to define those KPIs. Once we had those, then we started building a data, a semantic, a business view of the data that enable. And now we have 200 models with 2,000 KPIs that has over 100,000 monthly active users, but we started with one. And over time, as Sam said, it's iterative. The scope is very, very, very important. Start with reasonable scope. Start with a very strong exec sponsorship, a good analyst and a good developer, you can go very quickly.
And Marc, I would like to add to this, and I fully agree with you. And as well, have a look on the data, because what we were experiencing a lot, in the end, we had very good designed products, but in the end, we were waiting for the data to come in. Yes, because when you replace your CRM system, when you replace your financial system, in the end, you can have very designed products, but be always in contact as well with the technology team. To understand when to get what, when to get which data in the system, and when to get which product live. Because yes, put people in first, yes, put users' demand first is very important, but in the end, the product's only is going to work if you have the data in your platform and you can display the data. And this was, for us, one of the hardest challenges we had to focus on. And so in the end, it's a huge mixture of people, technology, clean data, data quality, and you need to really take care of the whole value chain you have in analytics.
Yeah, this is, of course, I think everybody is in this situation where, waiting for the clean data and waiting for something to be integrated and so on. But I think that's also one of the things where you need to be really cautious and try to overcome this in some sort of way, like Marc said, and also Laura. I mean, still there need to be some quick wins and quick prototypes, and you need to be able to do something. You cannot boil the ocean, right? But you can boil an egg, right? Quite quickly, like in a couple of minutes, right? And you have to do the same with reporting. I mean, okay, the data is not ready, but this is not an excuse to hold the whole project for a year, because it will not be ready in 1 year. Heck, it won't be ready in 3 years, right? That's a reality, and we need to change this. I mean, like, the old waterfall project management approaches, they are not working anymore. In fact, they never worked. They never, even in the 90s, this never worked for analytics, even for the classical data warehouses. So you need to have this agile approach when you start with something manageable. And at first, this can be a template. The template that you download somewhere, template it from our website, and then just copy and paste the data and show it to somebody, just to gain awareness. And then the next step, all right, automate some small parts, just do some small report and do a export import or something. Then automate this, and then once you have the confirmation of that with your end users, then you start, the requirement, like the cleansing of requirements, the understanding what we really want, what we really need from the business perspective, because you need to clear this up, before you start with the data. You don't know which data you need until you have a quite actually very good understanding of the business. So I think this has a higher priority, and you need to approach it in this agile way. This is how today a business is done. Every startup starts like this, and we need to think like startups here, right? And just do it. Agile. Laura, I think I believe that also in your company you had sprints, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I fully agree with what you were just saying. Start small and make it more mature once you're more progressing. So don't start with governance and too big data requirements. Start with small results first. And of course, eventually when it becomes a bigger success, well, also work like in tandem on the back end, because I've seen, maybe our first reports were Ferraris, but don't look at the engine. That could be later on. Stay in tandem and work on it step by step.
Great. Great points, everybody. I will have to jump in here. This is obviously a very topic that we are all passionate about, but we are running out of time. So this keynote panel is getting to an end, but all the speakers will be in the live Q&A session now. So please join us there, and you will be able to ask our guests anything you'd like to know. Thank you again to everyone for being here with us today. This was definitely a very interesting discussion, and I hope we'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Nasty.
Very soon, in a minute, actually.
Thanks,
okay,
Nasty.
see you in the live Q&A part.
Thank you, everyone.